one of the things that's crucial in this kind of platica and talk about trauma, the way it affects our people, is again, as some of you may kind of know or have a hint or maybe feel, the way the trauma is talked about in the field, the mental health field, the field of psychology, and the medical field, the way we experience it's primarily, it's centered on European values and a European way to think of injury and health and illness, right? Um, how do we hear the messages about how to recover from or work with trauma? We typically hear message and both and, right? Both and, let me step back, always means
Both
that
and.
just because trauma is centered on European values doesn't mean that what is said is incorrect, right? Or it's not helpful. But what it means is that it only takes into account illness and healing from one particular worldview. And so that is, it's like walking through the world with blinders on. We need to incorporate other ways of looking at illness, healing, and trauma. So how do we try to work with, respond to, heal from our traumas, our stresses? A very common response is kind of like, I am enough, right? Very powerful, very true, very validate. I can do this. I got this covered. At the same time, that is it's a helpful but limiting way, because that's a very individualistic way of looking at healing. It puts everything on the individual, and it also makes the individual completely responsible for the way they heal or don't heal. And in some ways, having that owning your own stuff is can be good and healthy, but that might not always fit for some of us. We may need other ways, expanding, like Blessediana, you keep saying, like expanding our ways of looking at it. So we have this self-agency, internal locus of control way of looking at it. And our people is a lot more about connectedness.
Yeah.
Our healing, is about how we connect with and affiliate with others like ourselves.
And with our non-human relatives, with the
Yes.
cosmos, with our Madre Tierra, with her blood, the water, with the animals and the plants, that are all of our relatives.
So in responding and in treating, if you are a provider or if you're just a community member in your healing journey, we need to remember that and beyond, beyond the individualistic way. We need to, as we've been talking about, how is our community affected? What are the historical links? What's happening?
That web.
Right. And there have been some other Latinx psychologists that have talked about ethno-racial trauma and healing. And they say that healing is not just something happens to us and then we respond to that injury and we do that work, right? That's an important piece, but it's kind of a passive piece, and passive is not mean doesn't I'm not meaning that to be negative in this sense in any way, but it's kind of it's a response to reaction. It's reactionary. That's right. But healing also has to be an active resistance to all of similar things that has injured you. You have to actively resist allowing things to impact you, or actively resist allowing behaviors to continue, whether it's from you or for someone else. So it's both the reaction to the injury, but it's also the active resistance.
And if we're taking a lot of hits, that's not so easy, right?
And that's not, yeah.
Did you do a slide on the language, the European language?
Couldn't find.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, there was another thing I was going to ask you if you did a slide on, because it was really important to say. So that a study was done on language, right? European language and native language. And I know for a lot of us, it's a leap to think of us as native to this land from Sem, Anahuac, and Anahuac peoples. Sem Anahuac means all surrounded by water, and Anahuac means surrounded by water. So that's more of our southern ancestors, south of here, well, including here. We're talking about North America. and the Americas. So anyway, if you go to Brown Continent, you can learn more about why it's important to go ahead and claim native, that you are native because you are from this land. We can talk about that during the identity course. That's its own thing. So anyway, my point in saying that is that the European languages have been found to be separating. They analyze, they break things down, right?
Components.
Into components. It very much values individualism and are
into like functioning parts of things,
right.
And that's how the language is built. I remember that part.
Right. Yeah. And then so
functioning.
our languages, which again, not just focusing on language because how many of us speak our native language, but also it informed the way we are. It's in our DNA, and we have those roots and the way of being, the collectivism. Again, try and follow it back to our ancestors, to colonization. So that's why we really always focus on expanding our view, right? So our languages focus on connecting, on concepts, on relationality. Again, it's all about that balance with everything that exists, right? With everything that is, with each other. So just in the language alone, right, there is trauma in the way that we are able to care for ourselves or connect with ourselves, heal ourselves. And this is why we spend time together here doing things like exploring, Raza Trauma, right? Like this is why, so that we can know what not only our traumas are, but also our cultural gifts, our cultural strengths, our ancestral gifts, right? I'm gonna see if I can remember. There was something that really needed to be said. People, it was when you were talking. Of course, I forgot it.
Sorry. Maybe you'll remember in the next slide.
Okay.
Or somewhere down the line.
I blame you.
Works. This is just and we've been talking about this already. So just, one more kind of example of racial trauma in the ways that some of these examples that we've all been saying can be overlooked, particularly by those in the field, the mental health field or the health field. So that when we're talking about how somebody is coming in with stress, anxiety, depression, we may not be able to survey what we would typically pick up as experiencing some type of PTSD or trauma, because we're not looking for these other kind of racially or ethnically shaming events, humiliating experiences. And providers may feel like, oh, well, we treat that's important, I'm sorry, but they separate that from that being a traumatic response or experience. And so we're saying that is also, or can also be, part of that. And we already know over and over that, these forms of racial stress and traumas affect us physiologically, contribute to substance abuse issues for kids, conduct problems, negative psychological symptoms, depression, anxiety, and other types of PTSD symptoms as well. So the impact is real. The result is real. It manifests. But people don't always trace that back to the racial stress and trauma. They'll connect it to other pieces, and so they're missing the most appropriate way to approach this. They're missing the core.
And we know that trauma stays in the body, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in the spirit and in the mind, and it's something that you have to work out. And that's not like you have to work it out, but it's something that we need to let out of our bodies, with limpias and sobadas, people who do that medicine, hierbas, and therapy, right? Talk therapy, which is in our ancestral way as well, right? The Mascal Sweat Lodge, oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful healing, a beautiful rezo, a beautiful prayer.